Welcome to the Tech Trek, where technology leaders share their insights, experiences, and views. Every week I bring you a new guest. And on today's episode, Charlie Greene. He is the co-founder and CEO of Rimento. We're going to be talking about chasing what you're most interested in. What I mean about that is a lot of times people have passions that they can't turn into businesses. And in this case, Charlie has found a way of tying that intersection, what he likes to do, and a business that he is growing. And I'm excited to talk to him about that journey. Charlie, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amir. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I guess two things. One, we'd love to know what Rimento does. And also, I know you're the co-founder, CEO. That means a lot of different things at startups. But if you could just give us the high-level responsibilities you have there before we dive in, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, Rimento is a tool to collect and enrich your family's most treasured stories and memories. The mobile app that we've built offers a simple science-backed framework for uncovering stories. We offer recommendations on exactly what to ask. And within the app, we provide the tools to be able to record, organize, and share the content with those you love so that those stories will be available and accessible forever. Being the CEO is a humbling job. I love the opportunity to be able to flex into fundraising and finance and strategy and marketing and investor relations, business development, partnerships, learning a lot about technology and design and product management along the way. And as any early stage founder also knows, the responsibilities of paying the bills and cleaning the floor of the office ultimately also fall to the CEO. And that's part of the fun of all of this being so early stage.
Awesome. We talked beforehand about, kind of the company, your journey. And I think what struck me and what I found really interesting was that it seemed that you found a business built upon some of the fundamentals, premises that you were interested in, right? And I think we'll kind of go back maybe a little bit and talk about, your journey to this point. But really what I found interesting was that, and maybe you could share with us the product and kind of how that ties into some of that why that you have, and we'll kind of peel back from there.
Yeah, well, the why is where this all began, and it was during a moment while I was in business school where I had the opportunity to reflect on past experiences professionally and take a moment to think about what I wanted to do next. And as I thought about the time that I had spent in the professional world before business school, it became very clear to me that the one thread that brought everything together was storytelling. I spent time before school in the Obama administration as a speechwriter, working for a couple of big media companies in journalism. And ultimately, the thread between all of those was telling stories, learning stories, and giving voices to those who needed to have their story told. So as I thought about what I wanted to do next, I reflected on that. And for me, what became very clear is where that excitement around storytelling stems from was from the way that I was raised, which was with two parents who were, I joke, freakishly obsessed with the home video camcorder that defined the late 80s and the early 90s. And in the couple of weeks leading up to and after I was born, both of my parents filmed an outrageous amount of video of me coming into the world, and then subsequently over the next 10 years. And our family didn't realize how meaningful all of that content was until my dad passed away when I was 10 years old. And it was in the process of digitizing all that content that we came to appreciate how meaningful it was to have moments like births and birthdays and graduations and recitals, those kind of Kodak moments, so beautifully preserved. But the interesting thing is we did look through that content in the years after he passed away was actually what we were most drawn to. And it wasn't the Kodak moments, actually. It was the long form video that gave us a glimpse into the person he was when he wasn't experiencing a milestone moment. Those were the moments that would bring a tear to our eye before the moments of him holding me in his arms for the first time. All right, so early in my life, a deep appreciation for long-form video as a way of telling the story of who we are. And then for me, there was a really shocking experience 15 years later when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I was in Portland, Maine, where she lives. And one night I was looking in my phone and I started scrolling through my photos and my videos, and I was blown away that someone who had imprinted in their brain the importance of video couldn't find a single video of my mom that was longer than 15 seconds from the last 15 years. Right? Tons of video of her carving turkeys and opening Christmas presents, but nothing more meaningful. So we ended up sitting down to record a series of oral history interviews to be able to make sure that if the cancer diagnosis that she faced went the way the doctors told us it might, that her stories would be available to my children in the future and then their children. And what happened through that experience blew us away for two reasons. The first was the questions that we asked with the intention of hearing the stories that we roll our eyes when we hear, because we've heard them so many times. They led to net new insights about my mom's life that we had simply never made the time to learn. And the second surprise there was when we cut up those stories and we shared them with family and friends, we were inundated with photos and videos and maps and music, all of which were bringing to life the stories that my mom was sharing with us for the first time. So an exercise that was intended to create value for future generations brought our family together in a way that we didn't even realize was possible. It literally fell right into our lap. And it left me with this deep appreciation for what had happened and an excitement in bringing those series of events into the lives of others. And that's exactly what we're doing with Rimento. We're trying to get people out of their own way and ask the questions that we all know we should be asking, but all too often don't take the time to do, with the hope that we can create something really beautiful along the way that creates incredibly meaningful experiences for all those parties involved. And part of your question was about the why. I'll just end by saying it is such a privilege to be able to do something that you feel like has the opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives, and to be able to find a professional opportunity to be so focused on doing exactly that.
I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm obviously, sorry that you had to kind of go through a bit of the challenges to kind of see the why behind it, but obviously you were able to capture, some of those moments that are probably precious now with your mom. What's interesting, I think you were talking about that why, and you kind of have been a storyteller. I think a lot of times people, when you hear them talk, and when I look at your background, obviously, you spent time with the Obama administration, writing, storytelling, it seems to be a very common thread, and you end up with this company that kind of is off the back of that, talking about your mother. It all kind of makes sense when I'm hearing it now, right? And as I kind of listen to this, I'm like at real time speed when you're thinking about this, those pieces don't fit together very well for most people. I guess when you think back, to your own journey and you're looking at those pieces, did those pieces make sense at the time? Was it a time in which, might have been, recording with your mother, or at some point where you're starting to see those pieces fall together, they go, you know what? Other people could possibly use this. This could be something other people could take advantage of, because it is something we all don't think about until, unfortunately, we're in a position to think about.
Yeah. Well, I imagine many of your listeners will have heard the famous Steve Jobs quote about the dots only being able to be connected backwards. I actually learned that quote fairly recently, and that is unequivocally the story of my story. Each individual step that I made felt like a pivot often as I was making it. I was actually technically fired from 3 jobs in a row, which is a humbling experience each time it happens because of political turnover and massive M&A deals. And there were many moments along my path where I really wondered what was going to come next and how, if anything I had done up to this point, would be relevant to that next thing. So for me, the story makes a lot of sense in reflection, but I can say with total confidence that as I was experiencing it didn't feel that way. And I don't think it feels that way for many people. And for those who I think it does, perhaps they're not the ones that are taking the risks that are of the most exciting, where ultimately the biggest value can be created and the most impact can be generated.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. I think it's really hard to see that those dots connect in real time. I think people like to believe and feel. I think there needs to be a comfort level. And the more comfortable somebody is with those dots connecting, the less risk, the more they'll leap into something. Somebody like you, who didn't see them but had this passion for storytelling, you take the leap you build the product. I guess the undertone for the conversation is that you're a storyteller. I mean, you're very articulate. You wrote for the Obama administration, so obviously we know you're exceptional at that. But when you were kind of thinking back to the business itself, and again, actually, before I ask this question, I'm going to ask you this question: was the business something that you decided to start at a point in which after you spoke to your mother, or was this something that maybe you were like, you know what, I want to capture stories, storytelling's my thing, and you wanted to base a business off of that? I guess maybe if you could clarify that for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people decide that they want to start a business, and then they figure out what business they're going to start, and that's amazing. Serial entrepreneurs, those are such important folks. I could not have fallen into the opposite category more strongly. I was sitting in business school working on looking at an empty Word document, a Google Doc document for a business plan that had to get written. And I knew that I had to put pen to paper and come up with an idea that would be able to turn hopefully into a scaled venture for no other reason than I had a paper due for that class. And I reflected in that moment on experiences that had shaped me. And it was in the process of thinking about moments where I had done something that I was proud of, that I thought others might be able to benefit from, that this experience came so squarely to mind. Again, the intention we set out when we sat down with my mom was to do something that was totally selfish on behalf of my family, right? And maybe in part selfish in my own regard. I wanted my kids to be able to have access to my mom forever. And what ended up happening was just simply too exciting to keep to myself. We took that content, we shared it with others. And it was only in business school, thinking about the opportunity to build and scale a new venture, that I started thinking about the opportunity to be able to take an experience that changed my life and hopefully bring it into the lives of others, right? A problem that I hear so many people tell me they experience, which is, I've got someone in my life who I care deeply about, who is aging. I want to know them in a way that I haven't. I want to learn more about their background, and I simply don't know where to begin. And it's daunting, and it's intimidating, and we've done a tremendous amount of research into understanding why it's so difficult to begin. So the premise of our business is, if we can give you a reason to get started, if we can give you the tools to make it a delightful experience, then there's an opportunity to solve a problem that is so crystally clear in its existence across the communities that we've had a chance to engage with.
Absolutely. And you hear a lot about people, the advice you get is follow your passion, follow what you like to do, build a business off of that. I think a lot of times we hear that and we're like, well, I like to, I don't, but I have this hobby, right? Let's say it's making paper. Actually, there's the guy that built matchstick homes and put it on TikTok, and he built a huge business out of it. It could be paper planes, could be model planes, could be trains, could be anything that I like. I think there's a lot of times a barrier to somebody thinking that could be more, or there's so many steps to get there. And I think hearing your story and your realization that, hey, other people can take advantage of this. There's other people that could possibly be interested in using a service like this. Obviously, you're going through Harvard Business School, so you're getting the tools. You're understanding how to build a business. If you were to take your experience of building this business, getting to this point, going through the fundraising, and basically talk to someone who's like, hey, you know what? You have this idea. You might have this passion. To explore it as a potential business idea, you need to look at a couple of fundamental things to see if you can. I guess based on kind of your own journey, what kind of advice would you have to those people?
It would be to move past the empty Google Doc of what the business plan is and how you're going to monetize it and what the strategy is going to look like, and just start. Prove that this business shouldn't exist. And every time you're unable to prove that, find another reason why you don't think it should exist and go prove yourself right. And if you can't prove that, go find another reason. And if you'll end up at a point where you've built an argument for why your business should exist with real data to indicate that it's viable, right? So I spent a lot of time thinking about what the business plan for this business should look like, but it wasn't until we had an opportunity to actually put something into the field that we started learning, right? So the question I would encourage folks who are thinking about getting started with something is, what is preventing you from tonight writing the first line of code, building the Squarespace site, putting up the landing page to see if it resonates, launching $10 or $15 Facebook ads to see if people resonate with the value that you're offering, right? Like, why can't you start today? And the answer is you can. So then the second question is, why are you the right person to do it? And the corollary is, why aren't you? So just go do it. Go do the damn thing. And if you realize that it's not the right idea, then go to the next one.
That's actually phenomenal advice. I think a lot of people get stuck on that. It is opening up the Google Doc and sitting there going, I need to type, and nothing comes out. And sometimes that is a barrier. I guess we talked about your background being a speechwriter. Are you obviously you have a software company. Are you a technologist yourself? Is that part of your skill set, or is that something that somebody else is responsible for?
I'm an avid user of technology. My phone at this point has more apps on it than I care to than certainly I could ever use. But I've got a phenomenal co-founder who is our head of engineering, who runs point on the app and is able to distill incredibly complex tenets of infrastructure, architecture, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, transcription, translation into really simple, easy to digest comments and ways of thinking. So I'm deeply appreciative for his ability to translate his world into mine.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess the reason I ask is a lot of times people have these ideas and they have these passions, and sometimes it's that skill set they're missing to be able to get over the hump. And that's why I was kind of curious, because obviously you've partnered with somebody to help you on the technical piece to bring the product to life. And I think that to me is, a lot of times we're too worried about that, and we're too worried about, things that shouldn't be barriers. And we need to actually, like you said, just go. And if you need to find somebody to partner with that is going to carry the technical side and you're carrying the other components, the strategy, the vision, that's what you have to do sometimes.
I would completely agree. And I would also say that the first thing you need to do doesn't necessarily need to be go find someone technical to help you build your business, right? There has never been a better time to launch a business than today, second to tomorrow, which will probably be slightly better only because of the accessibility of so many non-technical no-code solutions to be able to build unbelievably powerful versions of the thing that you want to go pour tens or hundreds or millions of dollars into to ultimately go build. So when I started this business originally with my mom, the thing that we created was a 167 slide Google presentation, a Google slideshow with hyperlinked pages to each other that allowed someone to interact with the best and closest thing I could build to a microsite. It was a hacked together Wizard of Oz prototype, and it proved that we could create something that was exciting to my family. And once we had proven that, it was time to go share it with others. And that's what we did. And that's why we started building. So finding the right technical co-founder or the right partner for you, that's going to be a critical piece of this. But don't think that you have to find that person again to start making progress.
I like that. I think the options out there to actually build a lot of this no code, just to, like you said, prove the business shouldn't exist as a part of that process. And I like how you mentioned that. I think that's actually ties in really well. As you're kind of looking back, and you've kind of gone through the process of getting the business off the ground and building that vision, bringing it to life. How do you, because obviously, at the time you had this vision of this product, and now that you've been working on it for a few years, how do you keep on that vision, right? How are you building that roadmap in your mind? It might not be formalized. It could be formalized. Doesn't matter. But in your mind, obviously you started with the product and you need it to keep growing and evolving. How do you kind of work with that to kind of keep it fresh and kind of keep unique views on executing on the storytelling component of that vision?
Yeah, well, it involves being incredibly rigid and stubborn on our vision and incredibly nimble on our execution, which means every day we're reminding ourselves why we're getting out of bed and the kinds of moments that we want to create, and treating every day like it's day one in reaching our ability to turn that vision into our reality. So it means hiring the best people who you trust, not to just do the functional job, but to be involved in the thinking of how we can ultimately achieve our vision. And then talking to users is not only such an important way of learning what we should build, not because they tell you what to build, but because of the insight that you can draw from those conversations. But it's also just such an important and refreshing way to remind yourself of why you're building this thing in the first place. So resisting the temptation to go into a hole and create something that we months later try to convince ourselves is a real solution to a real problem is not the right way of going. And I think a lot of startups fall into this trap, and there have been times where we have come closer to falling into that trap than others. But keeping the team excited, keeping all of us excited, staying personally excited about the vision is such a critically important role for the CEO of any company. And you won't be surprised to hear me say that it's all about the storytelling.
Definitely see the theme, and I think I actually think when I was looking at the product and when we first started talking, I was actually looking at it, realizing that I had such gaps in my family. I was thinking about my daughter who's younger, and I was like, what is she going to have? I have videos of her, tons and tons, hours and hours of videos of her and doing things. And I started thinking outside of the podcast, there's not much else. Like there's very few videos of me. There's very few, interactions of me with her. It's all me taking it of her, which is great because we all think, I'm gonna turn around and she's gonna appreciate that. But I never stopped to think about the impact of how she wants to remember me. So your product has actually made me realize that I need to actually put something in place because she's going to look back one day and go, hey, I barely know what my dad looked like at a certain age because there's no video of him talking. What did he sound like? And you've got me thinking.
She's going to have a great archive of podcasts for her to listen to. So at least she'll know the sound. She'll know the sound of your voice.
She'll know the sound of my voice.
She'll know that you ask. She'll know that you ask great questions.
Oh Lord!
But this is exactly the question that we're going after. Why is it that you have so much content of her?
Yeah,
and there's so little of you.
Yep.
And ultimately, our strong perspective is there doesn't need to be that much of you, but there needs to be something. And for a lot of families, there isn't.
No, I love it. It's fantastic. Charlie, thanks for coming on, sharing. I really think you have an awesome story. I love the why behind it. To me, I wish more businesses were started with that deep of a why. And I wish you guys the best success because it seems like an awesome product.
We really appreciate that.
Before I let you go, I do like to ask every guest this question because we've come up with great topics to follow up with. But if you could ask a future guest to cover a topic for the show, what would you like to hear about?
I promise this is not a full cop-out, but I will contextualize the answer that I'm about to give by saying we've done a tremendous amount of research into what a good question is. We've got professional storytellers and neuroscientists and memory experts on our team who have helped us think through what makes a great question. And ultimately, the best questions are those that lead to great answers. That's what the mark of a good question is. So my non-cop-out, slightly cop-out answer to this question is, what's your story? Because that is sure to lead to an amazing story with plenty of opportunities for follow-ups.
I like that. Definitely fits in with the theme of storytelling and with kind of what we talked about. So I actually think that's a great question. Is sometimes that the backstory, the origin story is really interesting, and everyone has something that they can share. So fantastic. Other question would be is obviously be in the show notes, but I'd like for people to hear what's a good way of getting a hold of you if they want to try the product, they want to reach out to you because they're interested in learning more from your experience or anything at all. What are some good ways of getting a hold of you?
Well, our app is available right now for free in the Apple App Store. It's Rimento, like remember and memento merged into one word. We're reachable at rimento.co, which is our website. Also, of course, you can search that on Google. And I'm available on LinkedIn. It's the platform that I'm most active on, Charlie Greene. You can drop us a note either on our website or to me directly through LinkedIn, and I'll definitely get back. I'm also very active on email. My email is charlie@rimento.co. Anyone who's interested in learning more about our team or the product, please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. We'll include all those and make sure everyone knows where to find you, to find the product. Thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing. I love the story. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thanks, Amir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I don't think I actually, now that Charlie mentions it, talking about, people's origin stories, I don't do a ton of podcasts about that. We cover a lot of tactical stuff, and I think maybe I should, and I think it'd be interesting to include some more of those stories along the way as maybe a standalone series. So I will be hopefully finding some guests to kind of dive into that. So thank you, Charlie, for that. And if you found the podcast interesting, useful, beneficial, please share it with somebody else who might. That's how we've grown. It's pretty much organic. Like and follow if you can on whatever platform. I appreciate it. Until next time, thank you and goodbye. That's it for this episode. I'll be back again with a different guest, a different topic. Until then, please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment wherever you are watching or listening to this episode. I can't thank you enough if you do. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.